Extreme conditions, extreme environments, on land and underwater. It's a niche that needs covering. The Addiesdive MY050s is a tough cookie, inspired by the iconic Luminox Navy SEAL, which it clearly homages. Welcome back to WesWatches. The Addies watch here takes the phrase the go anywhere watch to a completely new level. Built like a rock to last and endure, 316L solid stainless steel bracelet, alloy case to reduce weight, dependable Japanese quartz, screw down case pack, water resistant up to 50 meters, anti-reflective coating on the flat sheet crystal. On top of that, we get extreme luminosity. So with this watch, I paid 24 bucks. Well, I think it was like 24.80, somewhere along those lines. So just under $25. And I will be leaving a link in the description below the video, so make sure to check it out if you are after a sharp price, because I have seen these watches floating around AliExpress anywhere up to 40 bucks. So this is a looker, and it's homaging quite an iconic watch, right? The Luminox Navy SEAL. That is an extreme piece. And just before you start thinking, well, it's got an alloy case, well, actually, the original Luminox also uses a carbon compound case. So technically, it's almost plastic. It's like a resin case, and it's also very light. So the 43 and the 45 millimeter versions of the Luminox do actually weigh in with a silicone bracelet up to 70 grams or so. Here, with the stainless steel bracelet, you get 110 grams. I've removed 4 links to get it to sit on my 6.5-inch wrist, and now it comes to about 95 grams. And I'll tell you what, that's good, because if the case was actually stainless steel, this would be like a 200-gram machine, a brick on your wrist. I'm happy with the way it is. But anyways, let me tell you in detail about this particular watch. If I could actually liken this case to a human, I would say it's muscular and quite burly, so slightly blown out and yet not out of proportions, considering that you do have a lug-to-lug of just 50 millimeters, and you can see that on my 6.5-inch wrist it looks just fine. On the bottom we've got the alloy case, which has a high gloss finish, but because on top we've got a black bezel, which is quite high, it's at least 2 millimeters high, and it sort of engulfs most of the case. So you don't get to enjoy that high glossy polish. The threading on the edges of the bezel have deep grooves that allow for solid grip and rotation. The white markings on the bezel are not luminous, just the pip, which is typically aligned with the 12 o'clock. Now, I was actually trying to investigate the material this bezel is made out of, and I couldn't find any details anywhere. So you're just gonna have to take my assumptions here. Frankly, I think it's some type of high durability polycarbon. It's definitely not PVD, and at this price point, not realistic nor expected. We'll discuss the bezel action slightly later. The push and crown is wide and hefty, in line with the bezel form factor. It's actually guarded, and funnily enough, it is signed on the tip, which is unexpected once again at this price point. On the underside, we have an engraved stainless steel screw-down case back, enabling the 50 meters water resistance. And now let's talk about the bracelet, because that is potentially my favorite part about this watch. The end links are attached to spring bars on the downward sloping lugs. The beauty of this construct is that the watch looks super bulky, but in essence or in reality, even the slender wrists can enjoy this watch. So you can actually see how it looks on my 6.5-inch wrist. There is no overhang, and this does look like a monster, a beast, but heck, it's really not that big, because the measurements have been kept very modest and in check. This bracelet is something. There is fine vertical brushing on the inner and outer sides of the links. On the sides or on the edges, we get a glossy polished look, so again, standard. The links are held together by push pins. The links are wide and angular, catching the light on different facets. There is no taper here. 24 millimeters wide all the way down to the clasp. It looks business and it looks mean, but it's not nasty to the touch at all. Rather, all edges and chamfers are smooth. There are no sharp edges anywhere on this bracelet. The bracelet gets quite tight tolerances, feels solid, the link motion is fluid, and it just looks right. It looks like a high quality bracelet. So something that you would expect to pay the price of the watch, really. It is a good, solid bracelet. The clasp though is unsigned. It's pressed stainless steel. Fortunately, there are 3 micro adjustment options. And there is a safety latch, which is sort of expected with such a hefty and massive bracelet. Now let's talk about bezel action, because here I think I've got mixed feelings. So first we'll start with the good and then we'll get on to the ugly. With the good, the grip on the 60-click unidirectional bezel is great. The bezel gets consistent resistance during the rotation cycle, which is also pretty good. Now the sound is clear and distinct, so you can hear this ratchety sound. Another positive is that it does actually align to the 12 o'clock position. Now let's talk about the uglies of the bezel action. Because, well, technically there's just one, and that is the fact that you get quite significant playback between clicks, and it's sort of frustrating. Now overall with the bezel, I can't say it's bad because I love the resistance. I think the sound is quite clear and distinct. It's just the playback. So maybe it's not spot on accurate, but you can still use it. You can actually rotate the bezel, you can enjoy the motion, and yeah, it is functional. It's just that playback. I think for this price point, the bezel is probably one of the best I've actually had to deal with. In the $40 to $50, it probably wouldn't be the best, but again, this is the $20 to $30 price bracket. The dial here is super busy. Let's put that out there straight away. When you look down at the watch, past the bezel, your eyes hit the matte black dial with printed Latin 12-hour numerals on the outer circle and the 24-hour numerals on the inner circle. Something we're used to see on pilot watches actually. The printed minute track is at an angle to the dial, almost leaning against the reflective rehaut. The minute track has laterally applied battens of lume. These are edged in white printed frames, which add to the already busy dial. At 3 o'clock we get a tiny date window. It's neatly cut out, no chrome edge or bevel here. That means no luxury feel whatsoever, just utilitarian functionality. The hour and minute hand are batten styled, simple, elongated, essentially getting the job done. There is nothing extra about this dial. It's functional and providing you as much information as possible, and also in the most illuminated way if it's after dark. Let me show you the lume test. This is very impressive, considering that it's very clingy lume. What I mean by clingy is that the lume brightens up even if a minor amount of light hit the battens on the edge of the dial or the watch hands. Another really cool feature here is the reflective rehaut we touched upon earlier. So now when the lume is basically shining across the dial, you get the extra reflections on the rehaut, and that expands the light from the luminous elements on the dial. In regards to the crystal, we just get mineral glass, so sort of expected at this price point, but the watch gets anti-reflective coating, which is a very pleasant surprise and completely unexpected at this price point. Overall, I do like this watch. I think it sort of cheats us into thinking that this is a massively big, chunky watch that's burly and will only fit like the massive 8-inch wrists. That's not true. We saw it. The lug-to-lug measurement is just 50 millimeters. I've shown you how it looks on my wrist, which is 6.5 inches. So that's quite a slender wrist, and yet it looks fine. Now, I wear the watches I get onto the channel for a couple of days, so I was wearing it to the office with me, and it was perfectly fine. It sat perfectly fine under my shirt sleeves. Yeah, it looked a bit more bulky than a dress watch, but again, nothing spectacularly big. So it is quite a functional watch. And the most fun thing about here is of course the lume, which is very clingy, very bright. I love the reflections that the rehaut provide. and of course the bracelet. This bracelet is massive, 24 millimeters wide, and it doesn't taper down. It's quite exciting, and it's different. So it's like the masculinity sort of screams out of this watch, and that could be a good thing, I suppose, if you're into that. Anyways, thank you for watching this review of the Addiesdive MY050s. As I have mentioned, I did buy this watch on AliExpress, and I will be leaving a link to the listing I got this watch from in the description below the video, so make sure to check it out if you want a sharp price. Thank you for watching the review. If you enjoyed it, please drop me a like. If you want to see more of the same, you know what to do. Please hit the red subscribe button below the video, and I'll see you in the next one.